Illegal immigrants are going to be moved into private rental accommodation, all paid for. They'll never have to work a day in their lives. Remember when Rachel Reeves said this?
So I can confirm today that, led by the work of my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, we will be ending the costly use of hotels to house asylum seekers in this Parliament. Funding that I have provided today, including from the Transformation Fund, will cut the asylum backlog, hear more appeal cases and return people who have no right to be here, saving the taxpayer £1 billion a year.
We can reveal that what she actually means is that those illegal migrants are going to be moved into private rental accommodation. Serco, a private contractor working for the Home Office, was offering landlords 5-year guaranteed full rent deals to house asylum seekers. Prospective landlords were promised rent paid on time every month with no arrears, full repair and maintenance, free property management and utilities and council tax bills paid by Serco. But really, it's paid by you, isn't it? Because that's our tax money. If you're struggling to pay rent at the moment, if you're struggling to find a home, get on a boat, come across the channel and they'll find you a nice 2 up, 2 down somewhere like, I don't know, Windermere in the Lake District. Housing asylum seekers in private accommodation is cheaper than using hotels. Apparently it can cost as little as £14 a night compared to about 145 quid. But I think you have the right to not want your house next door to be bought by the Home Office, turned into flats and then pumped full of illegal migrants. I don't think you're racist if you don't really want your local town to suddenly become unrecognisable from the place you grew up in. Just ask the people of Ballymena. Well, get a load of this, because illegal immigrants are currently being investigated for grooming gang offences.
Secondly, Baroness Casey reports that she came across cases involving suspects who were asylum seekers. We have asked her team to provide to the Home Office all the evidence that they found, so the immigration enforcement can immediately pursue individual cases with the police. But let me make clear, those who groom children or who commit sexual offences will not be granted asylum in the UK. We will do everything in our power to remove them.
This just makes me so angry. These people broke into Britain, stuck their hand out, expected the taxpayer to drop a load of money in it, and now they're being investigated for allegedly raping Britain's girls. So naturally, the government wants to move some of them into houses in your town. I mean, if things don't change, I'm worried that there could be civil unrest. And I'll tell you what, not only would I deport the illegal migrants and the sex criminals, I'd boot out the big bosses at Serco, because they seem incredibly happy to betray Britain for a bit of cash. Right, let's get thoughts on my panel now. Before that, special addition to the show. Our political editor, Christopher Hope, is live with us. Hey, there we go. And you've been with the Prime Minister at the G7 meeting in Canada. Christopher, I believe that the small boats crisis was on the agenda today, was it? What's gone on?
That's right, Patrick. Welcome back to the Rocky Mountains in the north of Canada. The G7 leaders are looking at my session after their working lunch. It's called Making Communities Safe, focusing on migration. The PM will say the G7 of leading developed nations should go ahead and tackle the blight of organised criminal gangs with new sanctions in line with what the UK is trying to do by tackling these kingpins. On the way over here, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, did tell us how he's wanting to have talks with Germany, France, Italy and others about tackling a more of a kind of global attempt to tackle migration. He said we're seeing a much greater cooperation in northern France. I know that you're filming on the beaches in northern France would say otherwise, but the PM says to us they're seeing greater cooperation in northern France. It's an issue he'll raise again with President Macron. They met about 2 hours ago here at the G7 and we're yet to find out what was discussed, and we are expecting a meeting very shortly between our Prime Minister and Donald Trump. So yes, no question, we're at the G7, we're 1,000 miles away from where you are in London, but the issue of migration is raising its head here.
Well, thank you very much, Christopher Hope there, our political editor. off near the Rocky Mountains. Right, now, let's actually get the thoughts of my panel. We've got journalist Emily Sheffield, we've got political commentator Andy Twells, and the former chairman of the Tory party, Sir Jake Berry. Jake, I'll start with you. So, I mean, look, on this now, it's pretty shocking, I think, really. Again, social contract issue, isn't it? That we are now going to give illegal migrants, as you 5 years, fully paid up in these private rented homes.
Well, look, I mean, the first thing is that I don't believe this will solve the issue because, of course, people are coming in and they're tens and thousands every year. The reason we've ended up with all of these people in the hotels isn't that, we want them there, is that companies like Serco aren't able to expand fast enough to house people. They're not able to find enough landlords. There is no magic wand that the government can wave to create suddenly lots of houses for people to live in, when we already have a housing crisis in this country. And if you think, just in the last year, rents have gone up by 11%. Landlords are leaving the market. A record number of young people are trying to find a home. This will take what is already a system in crisis and make it much worse. It won't be worse, by the way, for these asylum seekers, that they get everything paid. It's hard-working, young families, people trying to get on in life, who will be pushed out of the housing market, so your local community can lose its rented homes for local people for asylum seekers.
Yeah, I mean, there is something that really sticks in the craw, Emily, I think, about the idea of being outbid for a rental property by basically the Home Office so that they can house illegal migrants in it instead.
No, I totally understand that people are going to feel extremely strongly about this. But I do think Jake's right. The fact is, we need to hit the core problem, which is controlling our borders, which is stopping them, which is working harder with the French, which is using technology. I know how good this drone technology is. I do not understand why you're not using more drones to track them and stop them from even getting in the boat. So something's not going right there. Why aren't we using more drones patrolling our borders when they arrive and tracking them down and stopping them? And there's still a huge amount of illegal immigration that's actually happening by dint of people arriving here on sort of student visas and then staying illegally and clogging up our courts. So that it's the cause of the problem that's got to be tackled rather than us. Of course, no one wants housing taken up to house illegal people, but we have to tackle people coming here in the first place, and that's the root of it.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think of it? Should Labour really be looking to block this? I mean, we were told, weren't we? OK, we're going to shut the migrant hotels, but then what she didn't tell you is we're just going to move into your town.
I think if this is, a temporary solution, I think this is probably quite good. I think, you said, it goes down from 145 quid a night to 14, 15 quid a night per migrant. That's a big decrease if it is a temporary solution. I think, it does take time to, get rid of the court backlog to kind of put the impacts in France.
So police, though. So at least when they're in a hotel, which I don't like, but at least when they're in a hotel,
they're in one place.
In one place.
And I do think that a lot of people can comment on this, and they'll be frightfully progressive and generous until it's a house bang next door to them and their young children. And suddenly, by the way, it's not filled with other young women and their children. It's filled with 10 men who are sort of between the ages of 18 and 25, because that is the majority of people coming across on those boats. I know a Labour minister, very senior minister, said the day, the majority is women and children. No, it's not. Yeah. And by the way, no one in those boats cares about those women and children. They have actually been drowned by the people in the boats with them. So we all want to be generous. We all want to care about sort of other human beings on this planet and their circumstances. But people tend to be frightfully generous until it's the house bang next door to them.
Hold on. I think you're right. We do all want to be generous. I would argue that we've been generous enough.
No, I agree.
We will never,
I agree.
ever deal with this issue. Is let's not forget, over 90% of people who come here illegally are just allowed to stay. Their asylum claim is effectively nodded through by the Home Office. We will never deal with this issue till we have a serious plan to deport people from this country. We should be deporting, 50,000 people come here illegally. We should have a target of deporting 90% of them within 12 months. Because actually, we have a housing crisis in this country. So we already have massive pressure on our housing. If they come here, no matter what their status is, no matter what their status may become, it is still exacerbating the fact that people who've lived and worked in this country their entire life cannot get their foot on the ladder.
Well, that's it. And I am worried about the potential for civil unrest here. Are you?
Yeah, always. I think we live in a very volatile society where, everything can fall apart quite quickly. You know, we see that in Ballymena last week. We saw it in Southport last year. We saw it in Los Angeles last week.
Streets of London most of this weekend. But, you know...
Where was that?
Well, there were protests all over London this weekend. The police have basically lost control of the streets. In central London this weekend.
Were there?
There were, yes.
Oh, well, there you go.
Oh, I live in central London, must have missed that.
Right.
Oh, well, there you go. I think you've got to think, though, how much is Serco making on this? You know, Serco have been a provider of government services for most of my life, and most of the time they're making decent money on top of this. They're the real ones that are going to be profiting out of this.
I actually think it's basically treason.
Yeah,
they're doing. I don't know how they can look at themselves in the mirror and willfully help with the housing.
They're doing a job, to be fair. They're doing a job, and they're being hired by the government, the Conservative government, this government.
You don't have to do that job, though,
I know, but they've still, what do you want us to do? So they've got to be housed somewhere. So Serco are just doing, Serco do lots of jobs, and we can
most of them quite poorly.
And we can, we can have a debate about that. That's a different debate. But I don't think it's treason carrying out something the government itself has asked of them.
I honestly think it's vile. Like, I think that I don't know how they look at themselves.
I mean, I think the other thing is they're not
doing that for a living.
They're not going to be housed in Islington, are they? Let's be frank about this. This is about pushing people away from London, where they actually want to be, into working class communities in the north of England, where properties are cheaper and rents are lower. So you will have small towns in Cumbria, in Lancashire, in West Yorkshire, who have a real change in their community that they never voted for and they certainly don't want, because people will be being pushed out of London into working class communities. So like everything else that governments do, including this government, and to all fairness, the last government as well, is the working class people in this country who end up with the burden of this asylum problem. That cannot be right. Those communities already have lots of challenges without their ability to rent a home at an affordable cost, access their local GP surgery, get dentist treatment, being further driven away from their ability.
And also, by the way, I just want to add, and I'm a member of the media, but it is a point I try and make frequently to members of the media. We are still at the point where most of the media, big media, are based here in London. It's not their communities. It's not their house next door. And so it does get underreported.
Absolutely.
It does.
Absolutely, it does. And that is a crying shame. It actually ties in a little bit as well, of course, with the grooming gang issue, which we're going to talk about a bit later on. Again, that underreporting of it. I mean, the BBC, I'm digressing a bit slightly here, but the BBC today released an article about the key findings of Baroness Casey's report and didn't mention the words Asian or Pakistani once.
That did get updated.
But it's just ridiculous.
It had South. So it had. It did have.
One of the key. It did have. Probably the most key finding.
It did have Asian in. It did have Asian in it. Didn't have Pakistani in it in the original copy, but then it did get updated.
Yeah, which is mad that they never did. Why wouldn't you put that in there immediately? But anyway, right. A Serco spokesperson says we have provided housing and support for asylum seekers on behalf of the Home Office since 2012. We are committed to ensuring those housed are safe while they await news on their immigration status. Our teams work closely with local community representatives to discuss any concerns they might have regarding asylum accommodation in their area. Right, OK, well, that's cleared everything up, hasn't it?